When I turned 58, my daughter-in-law threw a surprise party for me. When I arrived at the party, she and my husband handed me divorce papers and business dissolution documents, and he said, "You're not entitled to anything. We're getting married and taking over the company." I smiled and said, "Enjoy." The next day, I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. I should have known something was wrong the moment I walked into my own house and saw the balloons. Pink and gold streamers hung from the crystal chandelier I'd selected 30 years ago when James Construction Company landed its first major contract. The pool deck was transformed into an elegant garden party setting, with my finest bone china spread across multiple tables. The same china my mother had given me when I graduated from accounting school and married James. But it wasn't the decorations that made my stomach clench. It was the way everyone stopped talking when I entered. Business associates, local dignitaries, even the mayor's wife. All here for what Emma had announced as my retirement celebration. "Surprise!" Emma called out, her arms spread wide like she was presenting a prize. My daughter-in-law looked radiant in a cream-colored designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her dark hair was perfectly styled in an elaborate updo, her makeup professionally applied. She'd always been beautiful, but there was something different about her tonight, something predatory that made my skin crawl. I forced a smile and set my purse down on the marble entry table. "You didn't have to do all this." "Of course I did," she said, gliding over to kiss my cheek. Her perfume was suffocating, heavy and sweet like overripe gardenias. It's not every day my brilliant mother-in-law turns 58 and decides to step back from the business world. The gathering was impressive. My sister Lisa sat near the pool, avoiding eye contact. My neighbour Mrs. Thompson from the estate next door clutched her champagne flute like a lifeline. Several of Emma's friends clustered near the outdoor bar, whispering among themselves. James Construction Company's biggest clients mingled on the terrace, and there was James, my husband of 30 years, standing by the outdoor fireplace with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He wouldn't look at me either. "Where's Daniel?" I asked, scanning the crowd for my son. "Business trip to Seattle," Emma said smoothly, her smile never wavering. "He sends his love, of course. But don't worry. I have everything handled here. I've been managing so much of the company's financial planning lately. Something cold settled in my chest. In 32 years, Daniel had never missed my birthday. Not once. He'd flown back from conferences, rescheduled client meetings, even cut short his anniversary trip one year to make sure he was here. The idea that he'd suddenly prioritize work over family felt wrong, especially when he'd been so excited about presenting me with his latest sustainable building design. "Come sit down, Marie," James said finally, his voice strained. "We have something special for you." I moved toward my usual spot at the head table, the chair I'd occupied during countless company celebrations over the years. But Emma intercepted me. "Actually, let's sit at the main table," she said, her hand firm on my elbow. "I had the chef prepare your favorite cake from that bakery downtown." She guided me to the center table, positioned so everyone could see. The cake sat in front of me, a masterpiece of architectural design in fondant, clearly custom-made and expensive. Too expensive for a simple birthday cake. James cleared his throat and stood behind Emma's chair, his hands resting on her shoulders. The gesture felt intimate in a way that made my stomach turn. When had he started touching her like that? "Marie," he began, then stopped. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "There's no easy way to say this." Emma reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She placed it on the table in front of me with the same precision I'd once used to present quarterly reports to the board. "We thought it would be better to do this with everyone here," she said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "So there are witnesses. So everyone understands the transition." My hands trembled as I picked up the envelope. The paper was crisp, official, embossed with the letterhead of Harrison Webb and Associates, one of the city's most expensive law firms. Inside were documents, legal documents with my name at the top. The words blurred together at first, but then certain phrases jumped out at me. Irreconcilable differences. Division of assets, dissolution of marriage, and worst of all, transfer of business ownership. Divorce papers. And business dissolution documents. I looked up at James, searching his face for some sign that this was a mistake, a cruel joke. But his expression was set in stone, and Emma's hand had moved to cover his on her shoulder possessively. "We're getting married," Emma announced, her voice bright as if she were sharing wonderful news with old friends. as soon as the divorce is final. And I'll be taking over Marie's role in the company. Fresh perspective, modern financial strategies. The crowd murmured, some nodding approvingly. I caught snippets of conversation about time for new blood. The construction industry needs younger minds. Emma's always been so sharp with numbers. The room fell silent except for the gentle splash of the pool filter and the tick of the antique grandfather clock visible through the French doors. I could feel everyone watching me, waiting for me to break down, to scream, to beg. Lisa had tears in her eyes. Mrs. Thompson looked like she wanted to disappear into her champagne. But I didn't break. Instead, I carefully placed the papers back in the envelope and set it aside. Then I looked directly at Emma, taking in her perfect smile, her calculating eyes, the way she clung to my husband like a trophy she'd just won. "Well," I said, my voice steady as glass, "I hope you'll be very happy together." Emma's smile faltered for just a moment. She'd expected hysteria, tears, pleading. My calm response clearly wasn't part of her carefully orchestrated script. "That's it?" she pressed, glancing nervously at the watching crowd. "That's all you have to say?" I stood up slowly, smoothing down my navy dress, the one I'd worn to board meetings for years. "What else would you like me to say, dear?" The endearment hit its mark. Emma's jaw tightened, and I caught a flash of something ugly in her expression before she covered it with another perfect smile. "I just thought you might want to discuss the details," she said. "The house, the business assets, your things." "I'm sure James's lawyers have everything handled," I replied, glancing at my husband. He couldn't meet my eyes. "You always were thorough with paperwork, darling." I walked around the table and picked up my purse. "Thank you for the lovely party, and congratulations on your engagement. I'm sure you'll run the company beautifully." As I headed for the door, Lisa jumped up from her seat. "Marie, wait! Let her go," Emma said, her voice sharp with authority. "She's made her choice. She's chosen dignity over drama." I paused with my hand on the door handle and looked back at the gathering one more time. My house, my pool, my carefully cultivated business relationships, hosting my birthday party. But none of it felt like mine anymore. It felt like a hostile takeover disguised as a celebration. "Enjoy the cake," I said. "I hope it tastes as sweet as you imagined." Then I walked out of my own home and didn't look back. The night air was cool against my flushed cheeks as I stood on the circular driveway fishing for my car keys. Behind me, I could hear muffled voices through the glass doors, urgent whispers, someone crying, probably Lisa. As I reached my Mercedes, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead filled me with an odd sense of liberation. I had absolutely nothing left to lose, but I still had everything I'd earned through my own expertise. I spent the night in a suite at the Ritz-Carlton downtown, the kind of place I'd booked for out-of-town clients back when I ran the company's finances. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was using the credit card James didn't know about, the one tied to my old accounting practice. I sat at the mahogany desk, still wearing my birthday dress, staring at the divorce papers and business documents I'd spread across the polished surface. The legal language was dense, but my trained eye caught every nuance. According to the documents, I would receive a modest monthly allowance and could keep my car. The house, the construction company, the investment portfolio I'd built over 3 decades, all of it would transfer to James. To them. I should have been devastated. 30 years of marriage and 20 years of financial partnership reduced to a few typed pages. Instead, I felt strangely detached, like I was reviewing someone else's portfolio. My phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. "Are you okay? Where are you staying? Call me when you're ready." I turned the phone face down. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone yet. I needed time to think, to process what had just happened. More importantly, I needed to understand how I'd missed the signs, because there had to have been signs. The next morning, I drove back to the house to collect some documents. James's truck was gone, probably at a job site, maintaining the facade of normalcy. But Emma's silver BMW sat in the driveway like it belonged there. I used my key to enter through the front door, calling out to announce myself. "Hello, I'm just here to get some files." Emma appeared at the top of the curved staircase wearing one of my silk blouses. The sight of her in my clothes, in my house, looking so perfectly at home, made my chest tighten with anger. "Marie," she said, floating down the stairs like she was making a grand entrance. "I wasn't expecting you so early." "I won't be long," I replied, heading toward the home office where I kept my professional files. "Actually," she said, stepping in front of me, James thought it might be better if you made a list of what you need. We can have everything packed and sent to wherever you're staying. The dismissal was subtle but clear. I was no longer welcome in my own home. Of course, I said. How thoughtful of him. I turned toward the guest room instead, where I kept backup copies of important documents. As I climbed the stairs, I noticed changes already taking place. Emma's expensive handbag sat on the hallway console. Her shoes were lined up neatly by the bedroom door. She was erasing me from this house one small detail at a time. In the guest room closet, I pulled down a box of old files, tax returns, insurance papers, business records, things I'd organized and maintained for years while James focused on construction projects. As I rifled through the documents looking for my CPA license and professional certifications, my fingers brushed against something unexpected, a manila folder tucked behind the insurance papers. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were photographs, professional-looking surveillance photos of Emma. But she looked different. Her hair was shorter, darker. She was entering and leaving buildings I didn't recognize, getting into cars with men I'd never seen before. At the bottom of the folder was a business card, Harrison Investigations. Discretion guaranteed. My hands shook as I flipped through the photos. In one, Emma was kissing a man who wasn't James or Daniel. In another, she was accepting what looked like an envelope of cash from a woman in an expensive suit outside what appeared to be an investment firm. Find what you were looking for? I spun around. Emma stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. I was just getting my professional documents, I said, closing the folder casually. Of course. She stepped into the room, her eyes fixed on the box. You know, Marie, I want you to know that none of this was personal. James and I, what we have is real. It just happened. I studied her face, looking for cracks in the perfect facade. How long? How long what? How long have you been sleeping with my husband? Her composure slipped for just a moment. I don't think that's 2 years, 3, since before you married Daniel. Marie, she said, her voice taking on a warning tone. I don't think it's healthy for you to dwell on the details. What's done is done. I tucked the folder under my arm along with my other documents. You're right. What's done is done. As I headed for the door, Emma caught my arm. Her grip was firm, almost painful. That folder, she said quietly. It doesn't mean what you think it means. I looked down at her manicured fingers digging into my skin, then back up at her face. For the first time since I'd known her, I saw fear in her eyes. I don't think anything, I said, gently removing her hand. I'm just a discarded wife, remember? What could I possibly know about anything? I left her standing in the guest room and walked calmly to my car. It wasn't until I was safely on the highway that I allowed myself to look at the business card again. Harrison Investigations. Someone had been watching Emma. Someone had been documenting her activities, her meetings, her relationships. The question was who had hired them? And more importantly, what else had they discovered? I pulled into a Starbucks parking lot and dialed the number on the card. A gruff voice answered on the second ring. Harrison. Mr. Harrison, this is Marie Coleman. I believe you may have worked for my husband, James Coleman. A long pause. Mrs. Coleman. I was wondering when you might call. Can we meet? I think that would be a very good idea, he said. There are things you need to know about your daughter-in-law. Things your husband chose to ignore. As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years' anticipation. For the first time since walking into my own surprise retirement party, I felt like I might have some control over what happened next. Emma had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated a certified public accountant. Harrison's office was in a corporate building downtown, between a tax law firm and a financial consulting service. The kind of place where serious business got done. Inside, it smelled like leather and coffee, with the air of professional competence. The man himself was exactly what I'd expected from a former FBI agent. Turned private investigator, sharp suit, alert eyes, and the bearing of someone who'd seen too much of humanity's ugly side, but hadn't let it break him. Your husband hired me 10 months ago, he said, sliding a thick folder across his polished desk. He suspected something was off about his daughter-in-law's financial background, but couldn't put his finger on what. I opened the folder with steady hands, my CPA training kicking in as I scanned the documents. The first page was a background check on Emma Rodriguez. Except that wasn't her real name. Her real name is Elena Ramirez, Harrison continued. She's 29, not 25 like she told your family. Originally from Miami, moved to your city in 2020 after some legal troubles with the SEC. What kind of SEC troubles? Investment fraud, unauthorized financial advising. She was running fake investment seminars targeting retirees, promising guaranteed returns on cryptocurrency and renewable energy stocks. Nothing that stuck in court, but the pattern was clear. She has a talent for finding successful families and inserting herself into their financial lives. I flipped through more photos. Emma, Elena, with different men in different cities. Always the same script: the struggling entrepreneur, the ambitious young professional, the concerned daughter-in-law. In each photo, she looked slightly different. Hair color, style, even her business attire seemed to change depending on what her target preferred. She was married before, Harrison said. Twice, actually. Each marriage lasted just long enough for her to gain access to business accounts and investment portfolios. Then she'd disappear, leaving behind debt and destroyed credit. My throat felt dry, but my mind was clicking into analytical mode. What about Daniel, my son? Harrison's expression softened slightly. Your son was collateral damage. She needed legitimacy, a way into your family's business. Marriage to the heir apparent gave her that. The fact that he genuinely loves her, well, that just made it easier for her to manipulate the whole family. I stared at a photo of Emma accepting cash outside an investment firm. The timestamp showed it was taken 4 months after her wedding to Daniel. Does James know about this? I gave him the full report 8 months ago, Harrison said quietly, along with my recommendation that he share it with your son immediately and remove her from any company financial responsibilities. But he didn't. No. He said he needed time to think about the best way to handle it. Then, 3 months later, he called and told me to suspend the investigation. Said the family had decided to work with Emma more closely on financial planning. I felt sick. While I'd been mentoring Emma on company accounting procedures, James had been sitting on evidence that could have saved Daniel from this woman. Instead, he'd chosen to protect his own relationship with her. There's more, Harrison said, pulling out another file. About 4 months ago, she started meeting regularly with a lawyer named Thomas Webb. Not just divorce attorney, but someone who specializes in business acquisitions and hostile takeovers. Very expensive, very good at making sure his clients get what they want. She's planning to divorce Daniel? Looks like it. But first, she needed to eliminate any obstacles to accessing the family business assets. The rooms seemed to tilt, but my accounting brain kept working. Obstacles? You, Mrs. Coleman. As long as you were married to James and held your stake in the company, a third of everything was technically yours through your original partnership agreement. But if you were out of the picture, and she could manipulate Daniel and James against each other, he shrugged. She'd have controlling interest in everything. I closed the folder, my mind racing through the implications. Emma hadn't just stolen my husband. She'd orchestrated a complete corporate takeover. The birthday party, the public humiliation, even the timing. She'd wanted witnesses to see me walk away without a fight. Establishing a narrative of voluntary retirement that would hold up in court. What would you recommend I do with this information? I asked. Harrison leaned back in his chair. Normally, I'd say take it to a lawyer. Expose her, protect your family. But in this case, he paused. Mrs. Coleman, can I ask you something? Why did you really come here? I considered the question. Because I want to understand what happened to my business, to my life. And now that you do, I thought about James's face when he'd handed me those divorce papers. The satisfaction in Emma's eyes, the way everyone had watched me waiting for me to fall apart. Now I want to make sure she doesn't get away with it. Harrison smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. In that case, I might have some suggestions. But first, you need to know she's been making deposits into a private account. Large deposits always in cash? I think she's been skimming money from your company accounts, but I haven't been able to track the source. How much money? Over the past 8 months, close to $300,000. I felt my professional instincts sharpen. Where would she get that kind of cash? That's what we need to find out. Because whatever she's doing, it's not legal. And if we can prove it, he left the sentence hanging. I understood. If Emma was involved in something illegal, it wouldn't matter how perfectly she'd played the devoted wife and daughter-in-law. Criminal activity would destroy her credibility and potentially void any claims she might have on the family assets. What do you need from me? Your expertise, your access to financial records, and the ability to act natural while I gather more evidence. He leaned forward. This won't be easy, Mrs. Coleman. She's going to try to discredit you, isolate you, make everyone believe you're bitter and unstable. Can you handle that? I thought about the woman I'd been yesterday, trusting, accommodating, always putting the family's needs before my own professional instincts. She was gone, dissolved the moment I'd walked out of my own retirement party. "Mr. Harrison," I said, standing up and extending my hand, "I've been underestimated my entire marriage. It's time I remind everyone why I was the best forensic accountant in the state." As I drove away from Harrison's office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades' professional purpose. For years, I'd been a supporting character in other people's stories: James's devoted wife, Daniel's concerned mother, Emma's convenient mentor. But not anymore. I had work to do. I stopped at the first bank on Harrison's list and walked up to the teller with a smile. "I'd like to make a withdrawal," I said. The young woman behind the counter looked confused. "All of it?" "Every penny." By the end of the day, I'd emptied 8 joint accounts, transferred the funds to a new bank across town, and opened a safety deposit box for the copies of Harrison's files. Emma wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd picked the wrong opponent. As I pulled into the hotel parking lot that evening, my phone rang. James's name appeared on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message. "Marie, what the hell do you think you're doing?" the bank called. "We need to talk. This is childish and vindictive, even for you." I deleted the message without responding. Let them wonder. Let them worry. The game had only just begun. I didn't go back to the hotel that night. Instead, I drove to my old office building downtown, the one where I'd maintained a small practice before James convinced me to focus full-time on his business. My name was still on the lease, my CPA license still active. The night security guard recognized me. "Mrs. Coleman, haven't seen you in a while." "Working late?" "Something like that, Frank. Just need to review some files." My office was exactly as I'd left it, computer-ready, accounting software updated, professional resources at my fingertips. I'd kept everything current, never quite able to let go of my independent practice entirely. I spent the night doing what I did best, following the money. Using my legitimate access to James Construction Company's accounts, I began tracing every transaction Emma had been involved with over the past year. What I found made my blood run cold. She hadn't just been skimming cash. She'd been systematically redirecting client payments, inflating vendor costs, and creating fake consulting fees. The missing $300,000 Harrison had mentioned was just the tip of the iceberg. By dawn, I had evidence of embezzlement totaling over $800,000. But more than that, I had evidence of a complex scheme to bankrupt the company, just enough to force a sale to a shell corporation she controlled. My phone rang at 7:00 a.m. James's number flashed on the screen. "Marie, where the hell are you? We need to talk." "Do we?" "The bank called about some account irregularities. They're asking questions about transactions you supposedly authorized." I smiled grimly. Emma was already trying to frame me for her crimes. "I'm sure they are, James. I'm sure they are." 3 days passed before Emma made her move. I was having breakfast at the country club when she appeared, sliding into the booth across from me like we were old friends meeting for their weekly catch-up. She looked perfect as always, designer clothes, flawless makeup, not a hair out of place. But there was something different about her eyes. A hardness that she'd never bothered to hide from me before. "Hello, Marie," she said, signaling the waitress for coffee. "You've been difficult to reach." "Have I?" I continued reviewing the financial documents spread across the table, not looking up. "I hadn't noticed." "We need to talk." "About what?" She waited until the waitress poured her coffee and walked away before leaning forward. "About the little investigation you've been conducting." I finally looked at her, feigning confusion. "I'm sorry?" "Don't play dumb. You've been digging into company accounts, asking questions, making people nervous." "Oh, that." I took a sip of my orange juice. Well, old habits die hard. "Once an accountant, always an accountant." Her jaw tightened. "That's not your business anymore. The divorce papers clearly state your role in the company has ended." "The divorce papers aren't finalized," I interrupted. "Until they are, I'm still a founding partner of James Construction Company. I still have fiduciary responsibility." For a moment, her mask slipped completely. I saw rage flash across her features, quickly replaced by the practiced smile I'd grown to despise. "Marie," she said, her voice taking on a sickeningly sweet tone, "I understand you're hurt. What happened at your birthday party wasn't ideal, but sometimes these things can't be helped. James and I, what we have is real. It's not something either of us planned. Of course not. But this vindictive behavior isn't helping anyone. You're only making things harder for Daniel, for the whole family, for the business. I set down my coffee cup and really looked at her. Are you threatening me? Of course not. She laughed, but it sounded forced. I'm trying to help you understand the situation. See, the thing is, I know you're angry. I know you want to hurt us. But you should be careful about how you go about it. Should I? She pulled her phone from her purse and placed it on the table. On the screen was a photograph me entering Harrison's office building. Private investigators can be useful, she said casually, but they can also be dangerous, especially when they start poking around in places they don't belong. My blood went cold, but I kept my expression neutral. I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you directly. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Stay out of my business, Marie. Take your little settlement and disappear quietly. Find yourself a nice condo in Florida. Join a book club with other retired women. And leave my family alone. Your family? Yes. My family. Daniel is my husband. James will be soon. And you're nobody. A bitter old woman who can't accept that she's been replaced by someone younger, prettier, and smarter. The insults rolled off me like water. I'd heard worse from opposing counsel in court. But what struck me was the possessiveness in her voice when she talked about Daniel and James. The way she said my family, like she'd acquired them in a hostile takeover. You know what's interesting? I said, pulling out my tablet. I've been doing some research too. Her eyes narrowed. Have you? I opened a file and turned the screen toward her. Bank records, transaction histories, forensic accounting reports. Elena Ramirez, I read aloud, also known as Emma Rodriguez, also known as Lisa Martinez. Quite an impressive collection of identities for someone so young. Emma's face went white. This spreadsheet shows some fascinating patterns, I continued, scrolling through the data. Cash deposits that coincidentally match missing client payments. Consulting fees paid to shell companies you control. Vendor invoices that have been systematically inflated. That doesn't prove anything, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Doesn't it? I swiped to the next screen. Because here's what's really interesting. The SEC has been looking for Elena Ramirez for over 2 years. Something about an investment fraud scheme in Miami that bilked retirees out of their life savings. I showed her a screenshot of a federal warrant. Care to explain why the woman wanted for securities fraud is currently managing my family's construction company? She stared at the tablet, her breathing shallow. You have no idea what you're dealing with, don't I? I think I'm dealing with a professional con artist who thought she'd found the perfect mark in my family. A woman who specializes in financial fraud and has been planning this for years. You can't prove any of that. Maybe not. But I don't need to prove it to destroy you. I just need to make a phone call. I picked up my phone and showed her the contact I'd already dialed. Tell me, what do you think the FBI would say about your current location? What about the SEC? How long do you think it would take them to start asking questions about the $800,000 you've embezzled from James' construction company? Emma's hands were shaking now. She gripped her coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. What do you want? She asked finally. I want you gone. Today. Divorce Daniel, break things off with James, and disappear from our lives. What? Or I'll make sure the federal authorities know exactly where to find you. And I'll make sure they know you've been using their most wanted fugitive has been laundering money through a legitimate construction business. Her face went ashen. You wouldn't. Try me. We stared at each other across the table, two women who had underestimated each other from the beginning. Finally, Emma broke eye contact. I need time, she said. You have 24 hours. That's not enough. I need to figure out how to extract myself without triggering an SEC investigation that could destroy the company. 24 hours? I repeated, or I start making phone calls. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. You have no idea what you've just done. You think this is just about me? There are other people involved, people who don't forgive financial losses. Then you'd better figure out how to make them whole without involving my family. She walked away without another word, leaving her untouched coffee growing cold on the table. I watched her go, noting the way her perfect posture had crumbled, the slight tremor in her step. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had the upper hand. But as I sat there alone in the country club dining room, a nagging worry tugged at the back of my mind. Emma was desperate, and desperate people did dangerous things. I'd cornered her, but cornered animals had a tendency to bite. I pulled out my phone and called Harrison. It's Marie Coleman, I said when he answered. We need to move faster than we planned. Emma didn't wait 24 hours to make her next move. At 300 in the morning, my hotel room phone rang, jolting me from a restless sleep. Mom! Daniel's voice was strained, panicked. Something's happened to Emma. She's in the hospital. I sat up, instantly alert. What happened? I don't know. She called me crying, said someone attacked her in the parking garage. She's at St. Mary's. Mom, I know things have been complicated between you two, but she's asking for you. She says there are things you need to know about the company. Every instinct I had screamed that this was another manipulation, but I couldn't ignore the genuine fear in my son's voice. I'll be right there. The emergency room was chaos, fluorescent lights, the smell of antiseptic, and the constant beeping of machines. I found Daniel pacing in the waiting area, his hair disheveled, still wearing the clothes he'd obviously thrown on in a hurry. How is she? I asked. They're running tests. She has a concussion. Some bruises. He ran his hands through his hair. Mom, she's terrified. She keeps saying someone's going to come back for her, someone connected to company finances. Before I could respond, a doctor approached us. Family of Emma Coleman? Yes, Daniel said immediately. I noticed he used my married name, not Rodriguez. She's stable, but she's asking to speak with someone named Marie. Says it's urgent. Something about business records. Daniel looked at me pleadingly. Against my better judgment, I followed the doctor down the hallway to a small room where Emma lay propped up in bed, a bandage wrapped around her head. She looked genuinely fragile for the first time since I'd known her. Marie, she whispered when she saw me. Thank God you came. I approached the bed cautiously. Daniel said you were attacked. She glanced toward the door, then grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. We need to talk. Alone. I looked back at Daniel, who was hovering in the doorway. Give us a minute, sweetheart. He hesitated, then nodded and stepped outside, closing the door behind him. The moment we were alone, Emma's frightened victim act evaporated. She sat up straighter, her grip on my wrist tightening. You clever bitch, she hissed. You really thought you had me cornered, didn't you? I tried to pull away, but her nails dug into my skin. What are you talking about? The phone calls you made to the SEC? Did you really think I wouldn't find out? My blood ran cold. I hadn't made any calls yet, but clearly someone had. Emma, I don't know. Cut the act. Your private investigator friend has been busy. 4 different federal agencies contacted my former associates yesterday, asking questions about my whereabouts, my current business activities, my family connections. Harrison wouldn't. Harrison is trying to collect multiple bounties, she snapped. Apparently there are rewards from the FBI, SEC, and IRS for information leading to my location. Your little investigation just made me worth more to them than James' construction company is to you. The room seemed to spin. What are you saying? I'm saying your plan backfired spectacularly. Instead of scaring me away, you've painted a target on my back. And now that target extends to anyone connected to me. She released my wrist and lay back against the pillows, but her eyes never left my face. That includes Daniel. That includes James. That includes you. You're lying. Am I? She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Check your phone. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone. 5 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. 3 voicemails. I played the first one. Mrs. Coleman, this is Special Agent Rodriguez with the FBI Financial Crimes Division. We need to speak with you regarding Elena Ramirez and your family's business connection to her. Please call me back immediately. The second message was from the SEC. Mrs. Coleman, we have reason to believe you may have information relevant to an ongoing securities fraud investigation. The third message was the most chilling. You have something that belongs to us. Return it, or we'll take it from your family instead. You have 48 hours. I dropped the phone like it was on fire. What did you take from them? Does it matter? The point is, they think your family has it now. Guilt by association is a beautiful thing, isn't it? Emma's voice was almost conversational. Fix this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Whatever you've done, undo it. Get my family out of this. I can't. Even if I wanted to, which I don't, it's too late. You opened this door when you started digging into my past. I felt like I was drowning. In trying to protect my family from Emma, I'd exposed them to something far worse. What do you want? I want what I've always wanted. Full control of James' construction company. Enough assets to disappear permanently and start over somewhere these people will never find me. How much? $3 million. Cash. Untraceable. plus permanent transfer of all business assets to my control. I laughed, but it sounded hysterical even to my own ears. We don't have that kind of liquid cash. You do if you liquidate everything. The house, the equipment, the commercial properties, all of it. It's all there, Marie. You just have to be willing to sacrifice it to save your family. The door opened and Daniel peered in. Is everything okay? I heard voices. Emma's demeanor shifted instantly. Her eyes filled with tears, her voice became small and frightened. I'm so scared, Daniel. These people, they said they'd hurt anyone who tries to help me. They know about the company, about our family. Daniel rushed to her side, taking her hand. Who said that? What people? The ones who did this to me. She gestured weakly to her bandaged head. They know about you, about your mother, about your father. They think we're all working together to hide money. I watched in sick fascination as she manipulated my son's protective instincts. Even knowing what she was, seeing how she operated, I had to admire her professional skill. We need to call the police, Daniel said firmly. No. Emma's grip on his hand tightened. That'll only make it worse. These people, they have connections everywhere. The only way to stop this is to give them what they want. What do they want? Emma looked at me over Daniel's head, her message clear. Money. A lot of money. And control of the business assets. Daniel turned to me, his eyes wide with fear and confusion. Mom, what is she talking about? What's going on? I looked at my son. My brilliant, trusting son who had no idea he'd married a professional criminal. Who had no idea that his mother had just made his life infinitely more dangerous by trying to protect him. It's complicated, sweetheart, I said finally. Then uncomplicate it. His voice cracked with stress. My wife is in the hospital. She's terrified. And apparently our whole family is in some kind of danger. I need to know what's happening. Emma squeezed his hand. Your mother hired someone to investigate me. She thought she was being protective, but she accidentally alerted some very dangerous people to my location and our family's business connections. It was a masterful blend of truth and lies, designed to make me the villain while positioning herself as the victim. I could see Daniel processing the information, his expression shifting from confusion to anger. You had her investigated, he asked, his voice incredulous. Mom, you hired a private investigator to spy on my wife? I was trying to protect you. From what? From being happy? From having a successful marriage? From building a life that doesn't revolve around you? The words hit me like physical blows. This was exactly what Emma had planned, turn my family against me while making herself indispensable. She's not who you think she is, I said desperately. Her real name is Elena Ramirez. She's wanted by the FBI for investment fraud. She's been embezzling money from our company, Daniel. She married you to get access to our business. Daniel's face went white. Stop it. I have proof bank records, surveillance photos, federal warrants. Stop it! He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I don't want to hear this poison. Daniel, please, you have to listen to me. No, I don't. His voice was cold, distant. You've made it clear how you feel about my marriage from the beginning. You never gave Emma a chance. You've been looking for ways to destroy her since the day we got engaged. That's not true, isn't it? Dad told me you've been acting erratically since the divorce papers were served, emptying accounts, making wild accusations, hiring investigators. He said you might be having some kind of breakdown. I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. James said that? He's worried about you, Mom. We all are. And now this hiring investigators, endangering our family, putting the company at risk. He shook his head. I think you need help. Professional help. Emma watched from her hospital bed, her eyes glowing with satisfaction. She'd played this perfectly, made me look like an unstable, vindictive ex-wife while positioning herself as the innocent victim of my obsession. I'm taking Emma somewhere safe when she's discharged, Daniel continued. Somewhere you can't find us. And I don't want you contacting either of us until you get the help you need. Daniel, wait. But he was already moving toward the door. I love you, Mom, but I love my wife too. And right now, she's the one who needs protecting. From you. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone with Emma. The mask dropped from her face immediately, revealing the predator beneath. 46 hours and counting, she said pleasantly. I'd start liquidating assets if I were you. These people don't make idle threats. And neither do I. As I walked through the hospital corridors toward the exit, I felt like I was moving through a nightmare. In trying to save my family, I'd lost them completely. Daniel believed I was having a breakdown. James thought I was vindictive and unstable. And Emma? Emma had won. But as I reached my car, something hardened inside me. Maybe I had made mistakes. Maybe I'd underestimated how far she was willing to go. But I wasn't finished yet. If Emma wanted to play games with dangerous people, I'd make sure she played them alone. I didn't go back to the hotel that night. Instead, I drove to Harrison's office, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. The building was mostly dark, but I could see light coming from his floor. He answered my urgent call through the security system, still wearing yesterday's clothes, a cup of coffee in his hand and exhaustion written across his face. "Mrs. Coleman, what are you doing here?" "You called the federal agencies," I said without preamble. "You told them where to find her." He stepped back, gesturing for me to come inside. "I need you to calm down and explain what you think happened. Emma's in the hospital. She says people are after her, after my family, because of calls you made to collect bounties." Harrison closed the door behind me and turned on the lights. His office looked like he'd been living in it, takeout containers on the desk, a pillow and blanket on the couch. "I didn't make any calls to collect bounties," he said firmly. "I've been here all night working on your case, trying to build an airtight legal case." "Then who?" "Sit down," he interrupted. "There's something you need to know." I sank into the chair across from his desk, my heart still pounding. "What?" "I've been digging deeper into Emma's background, like you asked. The debt she mentioned, the dangerous people. It's not what she told you." He pulled out a file and opened it on the desk between us. Inside were bank statements, phone records, and more surveillance photos. "She doesn't owe anyone money," he said. "She's been running multiple investment scams simultaneously. The FBI has been looking for her for 18 months, not because she owes money, but because she's stolen over $2 million from retirement accounts across 3 states. I felt the air leave my lungs. "What?" The investment seminars were just the beginning. She's been operating fake financial planning services targeting successful families like yours. She gains access through marriage or employment, then systematically drains business accounts while setting up shell companies to launder the money. But she said people were after her for debt. She lied. The FBI is after her for wire fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. The dangerous people she's talking about are federal agents. My mind reeled. Then why is she in the hospital? Who attacked her? Harrison looked uncomfortable. "No one attacked her, Mrs. Coleman. I've been monitoring the hospital security cameras since she was admitted. She checked herself in, claims she'd been assaulted, but there are no injuries consistent with an attack. The head wound is superficial, self-inflicted. But I saw her. She had a bandage. A small cut, probably from a broken glass or metal edge. Enough to bleed and look dramatic, not enough to cause real damage. The room spun around me. It was all an act. The fear, the tears, turning Daniel against you, she needed to buy time and create chaos. If your family is fighting among themselves, you're less likely to present a united front against her." I buried my face in my hands. "I've lost them, Harrison. Daniel thinks I'm having a breakdown. James thinks I'm vindictive. She's won." "Has she?" He leaned forward. "Mrs. Coleman, what exactly did she ask you to do?" "Give her $3 million and transfer control of the company so she could disappear." "And did you agree?" "No. I came here instead." Harrison smiled grimly. "Then she hasn't won. She's desperate, which means she's making mistakes." He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Agent Chen, it's Harrison. I have information about the Elena Ramirez case and her current location." I listened as he gave someone on the other end of the line the details of Emma's location, her aliases, and her current scheme. When he hung up, he looked at me seriously. "Federal agents will be at the hospital within the hour. But there's something you need to decide first." "What?" "Do you want to save your family's relationship with you, or do you want justice?" I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "If the FBI arrests her tonight, your family will know you were right about everything. But they'll also know you're responsible for her arrest. Daniel might never forgive you for destroying his marriage, even if that marriage was built on lies." The weight of the choice settled on my shoulders. I could be vindicated, proven right about everything, but at the cost of my relationship with my son. Or I could let Emma destroy herself without my direct involvement. What would you recommend? "Let me handle it. You go home, get some sleep. When the news breaks tomorrow, act as surprised as everyone else." "Home?" I laughed bitterly. "I don't have a home anymore." "Actually, you do." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a set of keys. "Your husband never changed the locks. Technically, you still have legal right to the house until the divorce is finalized." I stared at the keys, duplicates he must have made during his investigation. he'll be furious. He'll be distracted. By morning, he'll have bigger problems than where you're sleeping. An hour later, I stood in the circular driveway of the house I'd called home for 30 years. James's truck was there, but no sign of Emma's BMW. I used my key to enter through the front door, half expecting an alarm to sound or for James to come rushing downstairs. But the house was silent. I walked through the rooms slowly, seeing them with new eyes. The living room where I'd hosted business dinners. The kitchen where I'd made countless family meals. The dining room where I'd celebrated promotions and anniversaries and contract signings. It felt like visiting a museum of my old life. I climbed the stairs to the master bedroom where James lay sleeping. In the dim light from the hallway, he looked older than his 60 years grey hair, lines around his eyes, a slackness to his face that spoke of stress and guilt. I stood there for a long moment, studying the man I'd loved for most of my adult life. Tomorrow he would learn that the woman he'd thrown away his marriage for was a criminal. He would understand that he'd been manipulated, used, played for a fool. Part of me wanted to wake him up, to be there when his world came crashing down. But that would make me as manipulative as Emma. Instead, I went to the guest room and lay down on the bed, still fully clothed. For the first time in days, I felt something approaching peace. My phone woke me at 600 a.m. Lisa's number flashed on the screen. "Marie, have you seen the news?" I sat up, instantly alert. "What news?" "Turn on Channel 7. They're saying Daniel's wife was arrested at the hospital. Something about federal fraud charges and money laundering." I reached for the remote with shaking hands. The morning news was just starting, and the lead story made my breath catch. A Miami woman wanted by the FBI for operating a multi-state investment fraud scheme was arrested early this morning at St. Mary's Hospital. The suspect, who had been living under multiple aliases, was found using the name Emma Coleman and had recently gained access to a prominent local construction company. They showed Emma being led away in handcuffs, her perfect hair disheveled, her makeup smeared. She looked nothing like the polished woman who had destroyed my birthday party just a week ago. "Marie?" Lisa's voice brought me back to the phone. "Are you there?" "I'm here." "This is unbelievable. How could Daniel not have known? How could any of you not have known?" Before I could answer, I heard voices downstairs. James was awake, probably watching the same news report. "I have to go," I told Lisa. I found James in the living room, still in his pajamas, staring at the television with his mouth open. He looked up when I entered, his expression shifting from shock to confusion. "Marie, how did you get in here?" "I still live here," I said simply, "until the divorce is final." He gestured helplessly at the TV. "Did you see? She seemed so legitimate, professional, brilliant." I sat down across from him. "She was good at her job, James. Very good." He buried his face in his hands. "Oh God, Daniel." "Someone needs to call Daniel." "I already tried." His phone goes straight to voicemail. We sat in silence watching as the news reporters detailed Emma's crimes, her previous schemes, her long history of fraud. With each new revelation, James seemed to shrink further into himself. "I destroyed our marriage for a criminal," he said finally. "Yes, you did." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain I recognized. It was the same pain I'd felt when I walked out of my own birthday party, the pain of realizing that the life you thought you were living was a lie. "Can you ever forgive me?" I considered the question. A week ago, I would have said yes immediately. I would have comforted him, made excuses for his behavior, tried to rebuild what we'd lost. But I wasn't the same woman who had walked out of this house with nothing but her dignity intact. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't know if I want to." My phone rang. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. "Mom," his voice was hollow, broken. "I saw the news. Can you come get me?" "Where are you?" "The Marriott downtown, room 412. "I'll be right there." As I stood to leave, James caught my arm. "Let me come with you. He's my son too." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his face. "No, James. This is something Daniel and I need to do alone." I found Daniel sitting on the edge of his hotel bed, still wearing the clothes he'd had on at the hospital. He looked up when I knocked, his eyes red from crying. "I'm so sorry, Mom," he said before I could speak. "I said horrible things to you. I chose her over you, and she was." He couldn't finish the sentence. I sat down beside him and pulled him into a hug, the first real hug we'd shared in years. "You loved her," I said. "There's no shame in that. But you tried to warn me. You knew something was wrong, and I wouldn't listen. You were protecting your wife. That's what good husbands do." He pulled back to look at me. How are you so calm about this? I could have lost everything if you hadn't stopped her. I didn't stop her, sweetheart. She stopped herself. People like Emma always do, eventually. We sat together in comfortable silence, watching the morning sun stream through the hotel window. Finally, Daniel spoke. What happens now? I thought about the question. What did happen now? James wanted forgiveness I wasn't sure I could give. Daniel needed time to heal from a betrayal that would leave scars for years. And I? I had choices to make about the kind of life I wanted to build from the ashes of my old one. Now we figure out who we are without her, I said. All of us. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office, a bright modern space downtown that was entirely mine, when Daniel called. The trial starts next week, he said. Do you think I should be there? Do you want to be there? No, but I feel like I should. For closure or something. Closure doesn't come from watching other people get what they deserve, I said. It comes from building something better for yourself. After we hung up, I walked to my window and looked down at the city below. Somewhere out there, James was probably sitting in our old house, still trying to figure out how he'd lost everything that mattered. Emma was in federal prison, awaiting a trial that would likely send her away for decades. And I was free. Not free from pain that would take time to heal. Not free from regret there were things I would always wish I'd done differently. But free from the need to be anyone other than exactly who I was. My accounting practice was thriving. I had clients who valued my expertise, colleagues who respected my professional judgment. I was mentoring young CPAs, teaching them to trust their instincts and follow the numbers wherever they led. For the first time in my adult life, I belonged completely to myself. And that, I discovered, was worth more than any marriage, any house, any life built on someone else's terms. The woman who had walked out of her own birthday party with nothing had found everything she'd been looking for. She just hadn't known she was looking for it until it was gone.